There's a whole lot of controversy among these Negroes over Korryn Gaines, the 23-year-old black female who was shot and killed by the police. Now, a lot of these Afro-American Negroes are saying that the police used excessive force on this Korryn Gaines when they went to confront her at her apartment. But what a lot of these Negroes don't know is that this female, by her actions, seemed clearly like she had some sort of mental health issue. Here we have a female who, when the police decide they're going to execute a warrant for her arrest, what she decides to do is get into an argument with them and then barricade herself into her apartment. And while she's in that apartment, she's making threats and threatening to kill police officers, and she's got a weapon. And she's doing this while she has her children in the apartment and her boyfriend. She is escalating a situation into a violent confrontation when there was no need for a violent confrontation. When we look at what happened and what the warrant was for, the warrant was for primarily traffic tickets. Traffic tickets, this was something that could easily have been settled in court. Unfortunately, because this Korryn Gaines was emotional and in some cases mentally unstable, she escalated a situation into a violent confrontation, which ultimately ended with her demise. This female went out, and while these police were trying to execute this warrant, she then decides to take out a gun while these kids are in the room and everybody's in the room, and decides to start shooting. And when you start shooting at police, what are police going to do? Their police are going to take out their weapons and they're going to shoot back. And then you have, because in this case, you have all these Negroes sitting there saying that this is excessive force, this is an unjustified homicide. But we look at the behavior and the actions of Korryn Gaines, we see how she played a hand in her own death. It's not unlike what Sandra Bland did when she tried to mouth off of this police officer, and then what happened after that is still a question. But she escalated the situation and led to arrest. Again, this was another case with Sandra Bland of a traffic ticket, but because she decided to mouth off and get in this officer's face, it turned into an arrest. Because when you make threats, what a lot of people don't understand is when you make threats to a police officer, he can arrest you for assault, because assault is the threat of violence. A lot of people don't understand it. They think that assault and battery means somebody hits you, but assault is the verbal threat of violence, and battery is the physical act of violence, and that's why they call it assault and battery. And all they have to do is take you in just on that alone. And that's why you want to de-escalate a situation. But unfortunately, many of these Negro women are emotional, and instead of trying to de-escalate a situation by just taking the ticket and moving on, they escalate it even more. But in the case of this Korryn Gaines, all she had to do was go down to the station, and they probably would have kicked her by the end of the night, because they don't really like to have these traffic ticket people in jail for too long. So, because it's costing them money to have her in jail like that. But she didn't want to go to court, so she decides she's going to escalate things into this confrontation. Now, I look at this whole Korryn Gaines case, and it takes me back to my childhood here in New York City. Back when I was a little boy, about maybe 9 or 10 years old, there was a case of a woman named Elanor Bumpurs here in New York. And originally, when I was watching the news as a little boy, the media portrayed Elanor Bumpurs as this victim of police. They said that she went in there, when the police knocked on the door to execute an eviction warrant, she came at the police with a knife, and then the police wound up shooting her and killing her. And at the time, you had all these civil rights activists and all these other people out here trying to make it like Elanor Bumpurs was some sort of victim of police brutality. However, when you start doing research on the case like I did many years ago, when I was doing research on this woman, Shadia Lane, when she assaulted the the bus driver, Artis Williams, I then learned the truth about your Elanor Bumpurs. When it came down to Elanor Bumpurs, like this Korryn Gaines, she had mental health problems. And she was doing things like defecating in coffee cans and leaving it in the bathroom. And on top of that, because of her mental health problems, she was not paying her rent on her housing project or her apartment in the projects, and went into arrears. And what happened was the housing authority decided they wanted to get their apartment back, and they were executing an eviction warrant on Elanor Bumpurs. And in the course of executing their warrant, Elanor, they broke down the door because it was barricaded again, And then Elanor Bumpurs came out at them with a knife. And because she came at them with a knife, the police officer had to wind up shooting and killing her. However, in the black community, they had turned it into a story about police brutality. But what the real issue was that no one wanted to deal with either of these women's mental health issues. Because when you look at your Korryn Gaines, it's clear to me that this woman had mental health issues. And I look at Elanor Bumpurs, it's another case of mental health issues. And I even look at Shadia Lane, and I can see there had to be some sort of mental health issues. Because I look at these Afro-American Negro women, it's clear to me that some of them have to have some sort of mental health issues for them to act in the erratic and out of control way that they do. Normal people don't act this way. I mean, this officer was trying to execute a warrant for her arrest. I mean, you have your children in the room. You would think any rational thinking female would sit there and say, I need to think about the safety of my children. I need to think about the care of my children. I need to think about doing what is in the best interest of the health and safety of my children. And going out here to take out a shotgun or a Desert Eagle or whatever she had in her hands and then try to escalate things into a confrontation with the police, that puts those children in jeopardy. And this is why that poor 5-year-old son of hers pretty much wound up getting shot, because this female decided she wanted to escalate things with police. And one of the things that made her escalate things was listening to all of these dysfunctional pro-black, back to Africa, red, black, and green Negroes and all these other Negroes out here who are escalating things and making things more than what they are instead of looking at the facts regarding things. So she's all worried about these police coming to get her, and that's making her more paranoid, and that's what's led to her, sadly, one of the things that led to her death. The main thing that led to her death was trying to confront these police and trying to shoot it out with them. That's just not going to happen. I mean, they have superior firepower. They have more men to take that on. You only have one weapon. And you look at this whole case, and I look at this whole case, and it shows me that when it comes down to this case, that it parallels Elanor Bumpurs. And just like in the case of Elanor Bumpurs, we see the same cycle starting all over again. People saying the police use excessive force on a mentally unstable individual, and then we have all these activists trying to turn it into something bigger than it is, and all that's going to do is further strain police-community relations. Because when I look at this case, this woman was culpable in her own death. And the sad part is the black community is going to go and argue back and forth over the death of this black female by these non-black cops and white cops, rather than talk about the real issue that led to Korryn Gaines' death, which was mental health in the black community. Because when we look at mental health in the black community, it's one of those subjects everybody wants to shove under the rug and try to sugarcoat. Because the only solution many of these Afro-American Negroes have for mental health is white Jesus and Oprah Winfrey. And I'm sorry, that's just not going to cut it anymore. When it comes down to this dysfunctional Afro-American Negro female, we really need to start talking, and even this Afro-American Negro, we need to start talking about mental health, psychotherapy, because it's clear to me that a lot of these people, a lot of these Negroes are winding up dead because a lot of them are thinking emotionally and they're thinking irrationally, and they're escalating situations that are simple into something bigger, and that leads up to their own death. And when I look at this whole Korryn Gaines situation, I see a female who pretty much all of her behaviors pretty much led up to her own demise. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe.